all the way down, and I thought, oh my gosh, is it sick? Does it have enough water? Is it enough light? And I didn't change anything besides just the positioning of it where my dog couldn't bark. And within a short period of time, it completely stood upright again. And I thought the plant has some type of consciousness, feelings, being afraid of that loud sound barking right in its leaf. You know, so I do think that there is a certain level of consciousness, and I think depending upon the sophistication of the plant, probably is more consciousness. The more sophisticated the plant, the more consciousness that there is in that regard.
Philosophically speaking, there is one consciousness, and that we partake of it according to our own development. And on page 289 on the Secret Doctrine, it is stated that this one life, or the spiritual essence of everything, gives power to the mineral by endowing it with polarity, positivity and negativity. In the plant, it gives it rudimentary sensation. To the animal, it gives instinct, and to the human being, all of the previous one plus a mind, which is a deeper understanding of consciousness. But everything from mineral up to the Diane Johannic host is conscious.
Absolutely.
Depending how much of it is expressed.
And you sort of traced our evolution, if you will, from the all through these various levels, the mineral, mineral, animal, plant,
but there's
to human.
Elemental stages prior to that the life wave goes through before it reaches the human kingdom.
So then, is it the position of theosophy to state that we are consciousness, not necessarily, where does the being part come in? It's like you said, we're minds, okay, so that there's mind, then there's soul, and there's spirit, okay? Those three things there are consciousness, okay? So then, would you say that there's instead of saying we're conscious beings, can you say that we are consciousness, despite the being?
Well, I thought you were getting at us being self-conscious. When we get to the human stage, we are self-conscious beings.
That's a given. That's a given.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But moving on beyond the human stage, when you go back up to, let's say, the yogi, who has gotten to the point where it's now universal consciousness. That being, okay, is no longer. Does that yogi who now is one with the all, would that person or that being, would it still consider itself a being or just consciousness? Because being is sometimes associated with a form, okay? And so one whose consciousness is connected with the all will not necessarily be a being, but will be consciousness, absolute consciousness. So I guess the essence of my question is that, since you said, like the former student said, that it's but one consciousness, okay? And this consciousness is not necessarily a being, it's just, it is. So in essence, I'm saying, the human, this thing that, in this human form, we say that we are human beings, okay? But when we have transcended the human form, the consciousness is there, that we speak of, we, I, me, evolves back up to just consciousness. So that's my question is, we are consciousness. Just like space is, consciousness is, there's no end to either.
Well, I think you're sort of describing partially the all, which includes all of what we're talking about. I'm trying to find the words here that it very well illustrates what, but it encompasses all of it, and you can only have the state of consciousness, if you will, thinking about the state of consciousness when you're in the material world, because when you get into consciousness, pure consciousness, then that would be something that would, well, I don't know about the Mahatmas, let's exclude that, would be sort of out, would be including the material world. In other words, you've got them all three, and I'm going to keep looking for it while we're talking and read it to you. it really illustrates exactly, I think, what you're getting at here. So if you put that on hold for a little bit, and we
Okay.
continue on for a little.
May I make a comment?
Yeah.
Well, a student degree is, I think, describing beingness rather than
Beingness.
being.
Yeah.
Well, beingness is that divine sat, and who can tell what the state that is? I mean, you have to experience something to know it,
Mhm.
and to know it, you have to have enlarged your consciousness to be inclusive of all, which means that you have now become a perfected human being, which means you know all and you're part of all, and you know how to work with the forces of nature. In other words, you have become the controller rather than that being in charge of you. So
Mhm.
who can say exactly what that really is?
Exactly.
And
I
so
think we're
it's-
talking about this paragraph here. If I could
Yes.
read two sentences from this paragraph, I think we're hitting on what both of you are saying. Starting out this paragraph, this student just said, there can be no manifestation of consciousness or semi-consciousness except through the vehicle of matter. And it develops this thought, and then it says consciousness implies limitations and qualifications, something to be conscious of, and someone to be conscious of it. And then we get into absolute consciousness, which I think we're sort of hitting on too. Absolute consciousness contains the cognizer, the thing cognized, and the cognition altogether. All three in itself, three in one. So I think we're talking about those kinds of concepts.
You mentioned dreams. In her section on dreams, it states how a person with bad intentions could sort of like extract from the sleeper or the dreamer his or her astral body and something like that, and can learn secrets about that person that person wouldn't ordinarily give up in waking consciousness. Okay, it seems there is some sort of vulnerability, sort of like the person is not protected, whereas in waking consciousness, if someone attempted to extract certain secrets or information from the individual, there will be an immediate recognition. So I'm saying, well, how is it that in the dreaming state this is so accessible, it could be done, whereas in waking consciousness there seems to be more resistance? You see, let's say the being is going through these various yogi states, in and out of waking consciousness, dreaming consciousness, but you seem to be, or the person seems to be more vulnerable to this kind of activity from some malevolent influence while dreaming. So is the dreaming state less, is the being there less protected?
You're talking about the
versus in
deep
a waking
dream.
state?
You're talking about the deep dream state.
No, not the deep dream state. It's just like when a person is dreaming. Okay, I would say the deep dreaming state is when you're at the banquet of the gods, something like that. But yeah, deep sleep. Okay, but now in some aspects of the dreaming sleep, it's stated that this person's astral vehicle or information can be extracted from this being while it's in that state. So I'm saying, is a person more vulnerable in that dreaming state than in that waking state? Whereas in the waking state, a person would, if someone approached you in your waking state, you immediately sense that and you immediately say no or repel that attempt. Whereas there's that seem to be that vulnerability. So.
Well, like the student said,
What's going on
the
there?
idea, the subject of dreaming is a vast state. Like the song goes, life is but a dream. So it goes from there. But yes, I mean, we are more vulnerable in some states than others. And this student thought about the idea of the medium in there. The medium you can extract, I guess, on whatever Socrates has said was a medium. There are more other mediums that basically have no control. They just are led by some other force. Okay, in this case, it was a positive force, a pure force was behind that. But very often, too often, there might be a negative force. So that's the idea of this student was mentioning psychism and so forth. We need to understand all these concepts so we can be on guard, I think, against some of those things that you were implying in your question. So yeah, I mean, I think there are several states of vulnerability we all go through, and that may be, you kind of hit on one of them.
But the higher self is protective and it is always there.
Absolutely.
So, HPV says that these states, I'm sorry, it's Mr. Judge's article. These states, he says, are beneficent states that we go through every night, that the soul knows what it's doing, and it goes in the same way as it comes back in the same way. And at all times, it is under the protection of the higher self, and no one can touch it. Those are
true.
not my words. I'm simply repeating what I have read.
Yes. That's the bottom line when we learn to tap into our fundamental being.
So then, as you stand there and I'm seated here, and the space between us seems to be empty, okay? Then if consciousness is everywhere, then are you saying that within the electrons that exist right now between you and I, there's consciousness between us?
Absolutely.
It's just not in a form that we can recognize?
Absolutely.
So an atom, okay, which we really don't see, or electron, which we really don't see, we see the effects of that, but you're saying that this room, can you say that this room is just filled with consciousness?
Absolutely.
Even this empty space that appears to be empty?
You said a key word there, effects of. I think that's what we see in our current state of existence as the effects of. And that's what we kind of tend to have a way of stopping at. And you took us down to a different level, and as consciousness exists around us, all over. And I think that's what we're working toward. It's having an understanding of those states of consciousness.
Could we also not say that the akasha or the astral is right here, and without that medium we couldn't even talk to one another, because it's the medium that telepathically conveys the stuff.
Exactly.
And the sound travels through it.
Mm-hmm.
So then how is it that, for instance, when people say, now consciousness, what's the relationship between consciousness and thought? For instance, it's just like thought. Consciousness seems to be this universality of ubiquity, whereas thought can be, however you want to work the formula or the equation. That the car takes the gasoline, the mind needs thought to drive it, something like that. But now, all these, how thought can be manipulated. You hear about people projecting their thought, or I know what you're thinking, and all that kind of stuff. People who can perceive what's in your consciousness. So how is all that carried out? Let's say one of these developed minds who has, through meditation, has acquired a certain level of skill. Okay, now he's, or it, I don't know what you call this being at that level, has developed some kind of facility with manipulation of thought, something like that. So is it that everyone's thought is registered, just like the air is universal and everybody's breathing? So this being who is on this universal level can just zoom in on whoever it wants to, and just so identify with that person as a certain level of thought.
You do. Oh, you can't see. Here, would you read that for us, please?
Okay.
Here, would you?
While we're getting, we're going to read the exact quote from the Secret Doctrine related to that. What you said brings in a lot of issues too, a lot of positive things, if you will. But you were talking about thought. What is thought? Thought is something that Marie Renee's going to tell us in a minute. But let me tell you while I'm thinking about it, because it'll go. Without consciousness, would thought be possible? And is thought something that comes and goes, or is it something that's ingrained? I mean, when we think of something, it's real, is what I'm trying to get at. And without this idea of consciousness, this would not be possible, right? This consciousness underlies all that, and thought is very important. That's why it's important to try to control your thinking.